The Autistic Culture Podcast Network, the sound of autistic culture.
ATPN.
With my Sapphire Preferred card, we took a trip
to a desert oasis,
earning 5 times the points on Chase travel, 2 times the points on all other travel, plus a $100 hotel credit.
Chase Sapphire Preferred, the card that's preferred for a reason.
Cards issued by JP Morgan Chase Bank and a member FDIC, subject to credit approval. Terms apply.
Welcome to the Neurodivergent Experience podcast, a podcast where we share the lived experiences of neurodivergent people to help create a better understanding for our community.
Join us every week as we bring you honest, raw, and inspiring conversations with specialists, advocates, and individuals who know exactly what it's like to live the neurodivergent experience.
I'm Jordan James, a neurodivergent specialist, father of neurodivergent children, husband to a neurodivergent wife, and author of The Autistic Experience, and I'm joined by my best friend.
I'm Simon Scott. I'm an autistic ADHD broadcaster, actor, and advocate. Join us as we journey into unravelling the neurodivergent experience. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Neurodivergent Experience, and hello to any new listeners that are joining us. I'm Simon Scott, and I'm not with Mr. Jordan James today. He's taking a little break from the show, not for any nefarious reasons, more so that his work schedule wouldn't allow us to record together this week. So I have a wonderful guest that I'm about to introduce, but just before I do that, thank you for everybody that's been a huge support for the Autistic Culture Podcast Network. We had the launch last week, and there's new shows that are out that I'm very, very proud of. So if you're somebody who enjoys conversations between neurodivergent people, or hearing info dumps about special interests, or even advocacy and discussing the medical side of it, there's lots of brilliant shows out there across the network, and I'm really pleased that you're enjoying them. And if you haven't already, go and check them out. But anyway, less about the housekeeping and more about the neurodivergent experience. I am joined today by the wonderful Sophie James, who is Jordan's daughter. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, thank you for joining me and for stepping in. So one of the things that I would love to talk to you about today, Sophie, is you are doing some unbelievable advocacy, which has now turned into like an entrepreneurship, which I'm very proud about, because it's always amazing to hear neurodivergent people doing it their way and being a big success of it. So I thought today we could talk about young neurodivergent entrepreneurship and building a career that fits your brain, because many traditional ideas about work and careers, Sophie, and success, I think anyway, are designed around neurotypical expectations.
Yeah.
You know, it's if you're not first, you're last, and you've got to outwork everybody, and, you know, you've got to be loyal to companies, and all these sorts of stereotypes that were kind of force-fed from a really young age. And I wish I could kind of go back as a young neurodivergent. I mean, I'm 32, but you make me feel quite old.
Ancient, you're ancient.
Wizard. But I am increasingly leaning towards people creating their own path through entrepreneurship and advocacy or coaching and, you know, content creation. And it's basically about like creating a flexible career that works with your brain. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, for those that haven't listened to previous episodes that you've been in, and how you first became involved in advocacy and entrepreneurship?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm obviously Sophie, and I am 22 now, which is kind of crazy because I still feel like I'm like 18.
You'll never grow out of that, I
yeah.
promise. I'm 32. I got engaged the other week, and the whole time I was just like, I'm just a sweet little boy.
I'm too young.
I'm too young
innocent.
to die.
So yeah, and I found out that I was autistic when I was 13 years old, and that's because we found out that my dad was autistic. And me and my dad are very similar people.
Yeah.
And even though, you know, I was a young girl, I still was just so similar to him. And we actually kind of went on Google and we were like, autistic girls? And we were like, oh, yeah.
They do exist.
Yeah.
Did Google come back and go, did you mean autistic boy?
Yeah, it was like, but, you know, I associated with everything so perfectly. And we were like, oh, okay, I think I'm autistic. And when I got into year 7, especially, I did really struggle. And I found, going to school, making friends, being in that environment that was just constantly changing, very challenging. So it was such a relief to realize like that I had just a different neurotype, and that might have been the reason why I found like that place, like school, just wasn't the environment for me, and I was struggling more than others. But, I didn't get actually diagnosed until I was 17 years old. But, we just went along with the fact that I was autistic because we were like, well, I know myself. It's pretty obvious here.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of people are doing that now, aren't they? Like I'm a big believer in that.
Yes.
Self-diagnosis is as valid as anybody telling you know better than anybody what you are. You live in there, right? But so many people have to wait. I had to wait 3 years, and there is a lot of doubt in that time.
Absolutely. I always say to people, I think if you associate with a community, and it's a neurodivergent community more than neurotypical people, then you know yourself better than anyone. And I think waiting to just find out, like get a piece of paper telling you about what you know about yourself is obviously helpful as evidence, but you should be allowed to know yourself and associate with, what community you like. And I mean, we went to the school and we said like, look, we think I'm autistic. And luckily my head of year was actually my geography teacher, and she straight up witnessed me in like my geography class. She was like, okay, everyone, let's get into groups. I just straight up like sat on a table on my own. I was like, I don't want to be in a group. And she was like, okay. So she was like, yes, okay, I understand. This makes sense. But there were people who had more needs than me, and so they decided to just treat me as if I was autistic without the diagnosis, which I was very grateful for.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
And I didn't get loads of accommodation, but there was more understanding. And especially towards the end of secondary school, it was a cupboard. That sounds terrible. I didn't like stay in the cupboard.
Like the choking from Matilda.
But there was like a cupboard in a new build that they had that also had a desk, and it had a window, or maybe it didn't have a window. But I just sat and did my work in it because I just couldn't cope with being in class. It's like people just wanted to set things on fire and just argue with the teacher. And I was like, I'm not here for that. Let me just learn my lesson and then I'm done with the day. So it was just easy, instead of me missing out on school, to just go and sit on my own and do the work. Because I was always happy to do work. I loved learning. I was all good with that. I wanted to be a marine biologist. So I was like, I need to get on with this. So I got diagnosed at 17 because I was in college and I was doing biology and chemistry and photography. And I needed the extra time. I needed the support and more understanding without always having to prove myself. I mean, literally, the people, at the people who were giving me the accommodations, one of the ladies did say that I probably wasn't autistic because I could make eye contact with her.
Oh, how dare you.
So I was like, okay, it looks like we're going to need pieces of paper here. Yeah. So we got the diagnosis. Obviously, I came back as being autistic. But at this point in my life, I was really struggling, and I was struggling to go in. I did get given another room, but my anxiety was very intense. I felt like there was no one else like me, because in my head I was so capable. Yet why could I just not go in? Like, why could I just not go into lesson? Why was my anxiety so high and intense in lesson that I just would refuse to go, even though I wanted to do so well and I was capable of it? It was such an internal struggle. I was struggling with the people. I was struggling in a relationship. I hit a proper low. So, my parents were really good, and they actually got me a single therapy session with, a therapist, just to kind of maybe talk about my feelings and things. And she said to me, look, I think you really need community, because the one thing about me is what I am naturally fairly skilled in, and I'm happy to admit this, is I am always trying to improve myself. I'm always trying to improve things around me, and how could I do it better, and what's going on. And I'm just very analytical within myself. Like some people, maths, me, myself. I'm trying to figure out me and figure out other people all the time. So, you know, I had that one session. She was like, I think you need community. And I was like, okay, done. Let's do this. Let's find this. So I made my Facebook page, which was actually supposed to be a Facebook page about being more like eco-friendly and saving hedgehogs, because like I really wanted to save more hedgehogs at the time. So that was my little special interest. But I ended up talking about, you know, my experiences and, you know, what I'm like as a neurodivergent young woman. And so many people suddenly were like, that's my daughter, that's me, oh, that's like my son. And, you know, I suddenly felt like I wasn't alone anymore. And, you know, I'm fairly good with writing. I've always loved writing and making up stories and poems when I was younger. So I just wrote my experiences and my feelings very openly and authentically. And it just grew. It grew into something really beautiful. And because I was so authentic and real, but I was that, but I was also, my outlook on neurodivergence was always, although it did just sound like I was being really negative about myself, my outlook was always, and I was raised with the fact that like being different is okay.
Yeah.
Like being different isn't
I have
wrong.
the same.
You know, it is, you should be, it's okay to be different. You can be different. Difference is amazing. And just sometimes these environments aren't for us. So it's not necessarily that we're the problem, but they're the problem.
Oh, yeah, no, like there's so many things that you've touched on there that are resonating with me, Sophie. And, you know, my own experience at school and university, it wasn't down to a lack of effort. It was down to a lack of accommodation and the environment just not suiting my brain at the time. And like you were saying about maths, geography, I can point out on a map and I can walk you to a certain place, but I'm not interested in rocks. And I used to be a pain in the arse in those classes because I just used to disengage. And, you know, I was, you know, my parents always used to joke on parents' evenings. They could tell whether I was good in a class or a teacher liked me within 3 seconds of sitting down in front of them. And, you know, what you were sort of saying there about your Facebook page as well, I've experienced that in a huge abundance within the last couple of years through this podcast and also through the work that I do with the Autistic Culture Podcast Network. And so many neurodivergent people aren't looking to be fixed. They're looking to just feel seen and to feel connection. And one of the things that I've loved about this show, making it with your dad and like having guests like you on and other people, is the messages that we get from people where even though we just have conversations and I'm just honest about my life, I actually feel like I'm helping people. And I that was the goal, but you don't really know how to do that. But just by being real and going, yeah, I'm a guy who's 32, I'm engaged, I run a business, but I'm also autistic. And every time I read an email, I feel like a lion's walked into the room and I want to cry. But I can still function and I still have a really full life with love and friendship and special interests and all of this sort of stuff. But there are days where I do have a really tough time. And it's been really helpful speaking to people like you and your dad and realising that I'm not an alien. I'm not on my own. And it's tough, but I think it's even tougher when you are that person and you're trying to figure it all out and you see other people seemingly figuring it out. Yeah. And then you go from the school environment to the work environment and it's bonkers. I mean, how did you find that transition from university going into the working world? Because I know your generation's having a real tough time of getting into the, you know, into the workspace. Yeah,
so when I finished uni, I was thinking, you know, I did a marine biology degree because it sounds kind of ridiculous, but I just liked sea turtles. Ever since I was 5 years old, I just liked sea turtles. I was like, do what you love. You'll never work a day in your life, is what they say. My dad took me to the Sea Life Centre when I was a kid. I just fell in love with them, and I was like, yeah, we're gonna do that. So literally, all my life, all suffering I felt through education was for a purpose, and it was for sea turtles. And so I did my marine biology degree, and I was like, I don't really care about much else about this when it's not about sea turtles, but there was a lot of it I did care about. You know, I really care about climate, understanding the climate and climate change and sustainability. These are all things I'm really interested in. So I got it, and so I was like, okay, I need to go and do something with sea turtles now. But that is difficult because nowadays it is actually like a really big field, and it is very competitive, which doesn't make it impossible, but I think you really, really need to love it. And I think I was maybe convincing myself I loved it more than I did, or maybe I was convincing myself this was something I could do as opposed to something I just love. And whereas actually my real skills, and always have been, literally ever since I was a little kid, was understanding people and empathizing with them and analyzing situations. And that is my skill. But I was trying to force marine biology and animals to be my skill.
It's even harder as well when like you've done it for so long and you know your potential. And then you're like, well, if I don't do anything with it, it's a waste.
Yeah, it felt like...
That's a nasty feedback loop to get into.
I think when I was doing my dissertation and I was just kind of like so confused about it, I was like, I'm not generally that confused about things I really care about. And I think maybe I'm trying to convince myself of something. But I was like, I'm so glad I went to uni. I wouldn't take it back. You know, it gave me so many skills. It's very good information anyway to understand. Yeah. And it's definitely something I could still do. Like I want in my life to volunteer. But basically I went on, I got an internship, and I also applied to do some volunteering that I paid for. And I went and did them, and they were not what they did not work for me in any way. One of them, the volunteering, was probably not the best for me to put myself forward for, because we had to like literally camp out in the middle of the night and like do shifts watching sea turtles lay their eggs in the middle of the night and basically like prevent poachers from getting them. And I actually really do not like being that unhygienic. And I think some people are absolutely fine with it. I know my boyfriend was much better at it than me, but as soon as I got there and I had to sleep with sand and sweat all over my body, there was a bucket as a shower.
No, thank you.
And you were only allowed a bucket a week. And
a bucket a week?
Yeah.
Wow. So
yes.
The economies on buckets has gone up.
It's, I respect that that's what they had to do. I think they could make a couple adjustments to allow people, at least like me, that have real sensory differences to do it. But I literally went there and I had to be put on the camp for my first night. And it got dark, and I hadn't no one told me to set anything up yet. And so like you weren't allowed any lights either because that would bother the sea turtles. So I couldn't see anything. I didn't know who any of these people were. I was in the middle of nowhere. I also had this is just stupid information that I'm telling at this point, but I had Invisalign, and you need to wash your invisible braces before you go to sleep. And I was like, I need to wash my teeth. I need to brush my braces.
But this is a really difficult thing for people that are routine based to navigate.
Yeah, I am very routine based, and it came to a point where I was just all my stuff was everywhere. I was very close to panicking, but I was like, okay, I could do this. I can do this. And then you also had to use a bucket of water to flush the toilet. And I
you're not doing a very good job of being a travel agent for this entrepreneurship.
I know. I did it, and I missed, and water went everywhere in the toilet, and I couldn't see anything, and I just ended up having a meltdown, and I was just crying, and I was having a genuine panic attack / meltdown. I was I don't know, I can't do this, and they had to get random people in the middle of the night to drive me back to the town where luckily my partner was. and he met up with me. I couldn't stay in the accommodation that they did provide. That was like inside, because for me it was very unhygienic, and I just couldn't do it. I was not prepared mentally for it. And I did release a sea turtle into the sea, which was the most amazing, that was incredible. I absolutely loved that, and I really enjoyed that part. And I could have definitely like stood there and, advocated for sea turtles or told people information about sea turtles, because I do really enjoy that, and it makes me feel very happy. But I couldn't be there, so I had to leave early, and that was quite demoralizing. It made me feel quite sad. But I understand my neurodivergence. This is a journey that I've been on myself. I know it was not my fault. It was not about me. It just did not work for my brain. That's absolutely okay. That experience was not for me. It was not a failure. It was a redirection. And then, so I went to Egypt for an internship. And I realized that I should have got swimming lessons before I went.
You can't swim.
I can swim, but
I was going to say, this is... I don't know about you, but the turtles they're in water.
I know. I can't overhead swim. So I can swim like froggy style. I can swim. I won't drown.
It's like dog paddling pool.
Yeah, I can't overhead swim, so I can't swim fast. And to learn kind of to free dive and
while
do things
swimming
like
with
that.
Currents and riptides, you've got to be a strong swimmer.
You need to know how to swim properly. Yep. And that was my brain. Not
but
really
you know what?
You've
figured that a lot of things out though. That regardless of whether you're on a smelly campsite in Egypt trying to save turtles, or you're working in an office trying to be an accountant, so many people try and force themselves through things to try and make it work. And you've figured out a really great life lesson there in a short amount of time, which is, this isn't for me, and that's okay.
And the thing is, I was told that I could go back home, I could go and get swimming lessons, and then I can come back and I could do this like full-on 4-month internship. And I was like, okay, so I'll do that. So I went home, but I just thought, again, I don't want this, actually. I want to want this. I want to be that person who wants it, but I don't want it, because my brain's going, I don't want to do that. I can't be bothered. And if I'm doing that, that means that I do not have enough passion for it. I do not have enough willpower for it. And I'm pretending to be someone I'm not. And that was okay. I needed to go through those experiences, and 100%, I already have like another project in mind. My life will be, I'm going to go and volunteer my energy in a comfortable way that makes sense to me, but I will volunteer my time because it is something I care about and I want to give to, but it is not something I want to do as a job, because it will not go well. And I did have to figure that one out.
Yeah, I think that's a really great life lesson for, I think, a lot of neurodivergent people to hear. I mean, I experienced it with acting. I mean, I'm a good actor, I've been in good things, but the lifestyle and the rejection and the constantly having to have multiple jobs just to sort of fund a career, and navigating people whose parents get them gigs and all of this sort of stuff, and justice sensitivity, it was hard. And I still love doing it, but I didn't have the resilience to do it full time. Like, there was too much that was affecting my brain to really make it work. And I think that's why a lot of people like you and I have gone through experiences like that, where we train for years to do something that we're very good at, we're very passionate at, and as soon as we get to the hands-on element of it, we go, the expectations have changed, the environment has changed, like the environment I trained in is very different to the one that I'm working in. And I think that's why a lot of us fall into working for ourselves, because we can set the tone and the environment. So before we go to a little break, I'd just love to just touch on what you're doing now, and then after the break we'll delve into it. So tell me, what is it that you're doing now?
So now I am officially a neurodivergent mentor, and I have been a mentor for about 4 years, since I was in college and I went through that difficult time. A lady reached out to me, and she said, I think it would be really good if you could talk to other people your age and kind of, give them your life experience and, just connect, with each other. And so I kind of started it from there and did it on and off through university where I was, studying marine biology. But I decided at the end of last year, it was when I actually went to Egypt, the person that ran the organization, they actually picked me because of the work I had been doing and the posts I had been creating about neurodivergence and how I saw it and how I could connect with people, understand people. That's actually why they chose me for the internship. And on that trip, I had talked so much about it. I was like, what am I doing? This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm so good at. What am I doing? I evidently love it.
In a field with a bucket.
Yeah, why am I in Egypt right now? Like, what is happening? Like, this is what I'm good at. This is what I need to do. And I think it came Christmas time. But I never thought, and so I had actually applied for some mentoring jobs because it didn't even come like into my mind that I could do it all on my own. I was like, no, I have to, I'm not trained enough for that, even though I've been doing it for a while. But, so I went for some mentoring jobs. I didn't get them because I didn't have enough experience in, actual jobs. Because they asked me like, I think it's called STAR or something. It's like when you have to give an example of where you showed this skill of like a project. And I was like, when they asked me the questions, I was like, I did my dissertation and like that was really hard and like I was.
It's really tough, isn't it, when you leave uni and they go, "Oh, we want people that have just left university, but you need 5 years professional experience."
I was like, but I have been mentoring for 5 years and like, how can you prove that you're really good at something if you don't
get the
have
chance.
Something to say it? Like, just I'll show you sort of thing. But it's not like that, and I understand it is. It's difficult nowadays. So it came to Christmas and I was just a bit, I was actually relying on this one job as actually a trainee autism examiner. Assessor to see if someone is autistic. I was like, yeah, this is up my alley. But then suddenly the job didn't exist anymore. They told me that very, very later on. And I just felt so gutted. I was like, I just don't know what I should do. I know what I should do, but I don't know who will make this happen. So I was like, I don't know who said it. Actually, I think it was my friend who did graphic design. I had actually met up with her in Birmingham. And she was like, no, I'm not going to work for a company. She was like, I'm going to do something myself, with my own art and my own graphic design. And I want to do it in my way. And I was just kind of talking to her and I was like, oh, I was thinking maybe I should do it myself. And she was like, yeah, I think you should. And I kind of went home and it kind of sat in my head and I was like, well, maybe I should just do it on my own. I don't know anything about it, but like in terms of running a business on your own, I don't know that. But I was like, maybe I should just learn. So I did what any normal autistic person does. And I went onto Spotify and found a podcast about being an entrepreneur.
Hello, yes, welcome.
I listened to it all. And I was like, yep, okay, I'm going to do it. And that was that.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, have you found your brain runs better? Because mine so does. Because like, I felt like I had to ask permission for things. I double guessed myself all the time. And now that I'm running my own, well, I say I'm really running it with somebody, but now that I'm running a my section of a business, I cannot believe how regulated I am, Sophie.
Yes.
Like, I cannot believe the flexibility that I allow myself. I cannot believe how I advocate for myself. Like, I used to be so shit scared of asking for a day off at my old job. I used to work 3 jobs and 70 hours a week. And I didn't have a day off for like 2 years because I didn't think you were allowed to have days off.
Yeah.
And now look at me. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go and take a day off now. Bye.
I think all my life, I just kind of proved that I can do things on my own. And I will ask for help when I need it, but I've always just naturally preferred to. All the way through school, I want to do it my own. I want to do it on my own. Just let me do it my way. Let me just sit in that room and learn it from the textbook. And if I need you, I'll ask for it. And I've done that literally all the way through education without someone telling me that that's something I should do. That's just what I wanted to do. And I got all the results that I wanted. I did everything that I needed to do to get, you know, the degree, and then after that to get the internships. And I was like, I've always worked better on my own because I need the freedom, because I will work hard. I know myself, I will work hard. I am motivated, but I need to do it my way. I need to do it with how my brain works. And I've made it sound like I've never worked, but, you know, I've worked as a receptionist. I've worked as in a cafe. I've worked as a gardener for 3 years with 3 different gardening companies. So I've worked like standard service jobs, and it was, again, always the environment that just, you know, like killed me. It really, really just made me not a good version of myself. And some people are team people and they can just get along with everyone, and that's so great. And I think that was not me. And like the thing I liked about my gardening job was that I could put my headphones on, listen to Stephen King audiobooks, and mow. And that's what I could do. And so no one had to talk to me. Like I just use my physical body, and like that's fine. I just move, you know, and then I get to still do what I want. And you know, no one has seen straighter lines than my lines, you know. I tell you that. I was the best mower around.
Best goddamn mower the grass has ever seen. Well, this has been a really interesting conversation so far, talking about, you know, doing it your own way. And as somebody who does that myself, I think you're doing a brilliant job. But we've been discussing what you do. So after the break, I think we should discuss how you do it. So I'm Simon Scott for the Neurodivergent Experience, and I'm talking with Sophie James. We'll be right back.
Hi everyone, it's Ashley Dupuy here, the in-house therapist on the Neurodivergent Experience and host of Mindful Mondays. And if you've been listening to these podcasts and thinking, gosh, I'd love to explore this work more deeply, I'd love to let you know about what's coming next. This September, I'll be opening a small group coaching cohort, a gentle, supportive space to explore the kind of work we've been doing here together. So if you've been resonating with the From Mask to Map series, or with the deeper themes we've been exploring on Mindful Mondays, this will be a chance to take that work further in community with guidance, reflection, and practical tools to help you understand yourself more clearly and move through life with more ease. So if that speaks to something in you, I'd love to hear from you. You can register your interest by emailing me at integrativeiom@gmail.com, and you can also keep an eye out on integrativeiom.co.uk, where I'll be sharing more details over the coming weeks.
Hello, welcome back to the Neurodivergent Experience. Simon Scott riding solo today, but it's not solo. I've got Sophie James from Sophie James Neurodivergent Mentoring, who's also Jordan's daughter. And before the break, we were discussing your now entrepreneurship of being a mentor. But I'm really intrigued to see the sort of mentoring that you do, because I've been somebody who's been suggested to do mentoring before, and a lot of the time I've gone, well, do I really have to tell anybody? Says the guy who does podcasting. But I'm intrigued. Neurodivergent voices are on the rise, right? We're increasingly being heard. Doesn't mean that we're getting listened to, though. And I think there is now a real rise in young people shaping the conversation online and offline. But I'm sure you experience a lot of what I experienced at your age, where you've got the right words and the right brain, but not the right face. So I'm intrigued. Who is it that you're mentoring? What do you find the issues that people are coming to you with, and the sort of conversations that you're having? Like who's coming to speak to you at the moment in time?
Yeah, so at the moment, I normally mentor, it is mostly women. I would like to mentor more men, but it is mostly women, and it is neurodivergent women who I would say are more quite similar in profile to me and my experiences. But also I get very different people to me, almost like quite the opposite actually, more similar to my partner Christopher, I always actually call it very thoughtful with words. That's the way I like to describe it. Just more a little bit more quiet, more thoughtful with what they're going to say, and more stereotypical in the opposite of me, of less facial expressions, more monotone. And I am just absolutely wacky. Like I have, I think, 7,000 facial expressions and gestures and ways of speaking. So it's either, someone can meet someone like themselves, or they can meet someone who maybe actually has a very similar internal way of thinking and processing the world, but is appearing, different on the outside. So, but the things that we usually I talk about a lot is I think it's EBSA, so it's EBSA, which is emotionally based school avoidance, which I now realize that's what that's what was happening with me, my entire life, is where I, really refused to go to school a lot of the time and struggled with my attendance. It was always below 70%. We always got the letter. And, at uni, they made the mistake of not checking my attendance. So,
Mine wasn't good. Not for the first year anyway. I got my shit together a little bit. But first year I was like, if you don't go, it doesn't affect your grade?
Yeah. The thing, I just did it all online. So
yeah,
again,
I just did it. I was like, what books are you guys reading? Yeah, I'll write an essay on that, and handed it in. And I know a couple of my lecturers hated me because they were like, how dare you turn up and dare you not turn up and still do well? But that's just sort of how my brain works, and I can understand a lot of people are probably experiencing that in this world.
I genuinely didn't know any of my lecturers on a personal level, apart from my supervisor, which he was amazing. He was awesome. But anyway, so what we talk about a lot is the experience of, kind of refusing to go to school. And what I do as a mentor is I like to understand people's neurodivergence on an individual basis. Like, you can come to the session, you can tell me you've been diagnosed ADHD, autistic, that's absolutely fine. But I want to know you. I want to know how your brain works, how you're processing the world, your sensory needs, your differences. I want to know you on an individual basis, because just telling me that you're autistic doesn't actually give me enough information. I still don't know anything about you, because, I'm autistic and I'm wacky. So, we're going to be very different people. And I want to know you. I want to know your strengths, what you're good at. And also what your brain isn't, like going with well. Like what does your brain not like? Does it not like, are you experiencing RSD? Do you experience demand avoidance? What does that feel like for you? So usually on my first sessions, other than just introducing ourselves to one another, I normally tell my story. They can tell me theirs. We do a brain map, because I'm very interactive, because I am a visual learner in and out. Like, I need to see something. Hearing a lot of information, sometimes it would just go over my head. I need to see it. So if we're going to visualize my brain and how I work, I want to, let's put it into a map, So we do the individual strengths, and a lot of the time that is actually the hardest section for people to fill out.
I was just about to ask you this. How, obviously the awareness around neurodivergence is changing, and attitudes, I suppose, are changing, but a lot of people don't feel good about themselves in those early days.
It seems to be everyone is actually quite self-aware about what they feel is wrong with them, and they are not self-aware about why they actually have a very interesting or unique or great brain. It's very hyper-focused on the negatives, and I always tell them, there's more than one side of a coin. There's always going to be a flip side. If your brain, and this is what I do dislike, is that I understand on diagnosis, and the papers, it's a very medical approach to neurodivergence.
Yeah, it's all the DSM stuff, yeah.
And so it is very deficit-based and severe, all these very negative words. These stick with young people very closely. And if their parents are not educated on it as well, then those words that those are the words to describe everything. There are no other words.
It forms your identity, doesn't it? In that
Yes.
really young age, like as an example, like my parents were always like, "You're always late. You're always late for stuff," and it's because I have time blindness, and quite badly, and that became a part of who Simon was at that time. Where if I was to be like, "Oh, who is Simon Scott at 18?" one of the first things that would have come to my mind is time is an illusion, and I'm always late, and then but that wouldn't come out as those words. The word that would come out would be lazy.
Yes. And it's understanding these words, and I like to reframe them, not because we're going to go into Delulu land and pretend that we don't have problems, but because we are not motivated through shame. We are motivated through reward. We're motivated through thinking that we're going to do something good for ourselves. And that's where things can become tricky, is because, you know, maybe their parents will give them lots of advice. Let's do this, let's do that. But the reason they're not doing it is because they see it as that means I'm doing something wrong. That means I am wrong right now.
It's deficit language, isn't it? All the time.
And yes, all the time. And so one thing that really always gets me is people say, you know, obviously they say attention deficit. But so then I sit down and I'm like, so do you not have a special interest? They're like, no, I actually really love this thing. I could sit down and do art for 10 hours straight. I could paint for 10
no
hours
problem
straight.
with your attention there.
So I was like,
wow.
So then how are you attention deficited if you can focus for 10 hours on something? Because that blows my mind. My attention span is very short, maybe 4 hours, but 10?
I'm like a golden retriever, Sophie. I'm like, squirrel, constantly. Constantly. I'm
like, whoa. But Christopher, he could go into a crazy, crazy hyper focus. So and that's where we start to change the language. So you're not attention deficited, you have selective attention. And just reframing those words, I guess technically they mean the same thing, but one is the flip side of the coin. Is actually then in life, if you focus on the things that, you do care about or you are really interested in, what can you do with that? What could you build from that? That's a skill. It's actually a really incredible skill to have. And it's not something that should be shamed. But I understand in neurotypical school standards and in the educational system, we at GCSE, we have like 9 subjects. So I literally still say to all my clients, I've done uni, I've done college, I've done secondary school. The one that was the hardest was GCSEs. And I didn't even do my GCSEs because I was COVID year. But it was still the hardest. And it was because it was so many subjects and it's just so much information and I don't like them all. So I'm not going to remember it all.
Oh, I remember sitting in a French exam and all my brain could think was Spanish because I had a Spanish exam like 2 days later and I was like, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
I still got an okay grade because my brain retains information that I don't even realise is in there. But I vividly remember sitting down in my French exam and turning the paper over and going, oh, merd. I haven't got a clue because my brain's thinking Spanish. And then I ended up freaking out in the exam a little bit just because I couldn't rewire my brain. And it was because I had too much to think about at the same time, and I don't think it sets people up well. But one of the things that you're mentioning here that I'm finding really interesting with your mentoring style, Sophie, and to be honest, I really wish I had somebody like you when I was at that age, is we've got to turn awareness into acceptance. You've got to start with, let me give you a perspective that you may not have experienced before, and let me teach you how to love it. That's one of the big things that I've found in my own self-advocacy, but also advocating for other people. I always say to people, what are you good at? What do you like to do? And anytime I ever meet anybody, and I feel like freaking autistic Jesus in my friendship group sometimes because of the amount of people that come up to me and they're like, oh, my friend is doing this. And I would ask them for your advice. And I'm like, well, I don't know this person. I don't know how they're neurodivergent. But what do they like?
Yeah.
What are they into? And I was talking to somebody the other day and they went, oh, my boyfriend is obsessed with cars. He's obsessed with really, really old school cars. So instantly I just went, what was your first car, John? He went, oh, let me tell you about this. And he's breaking it down and he was telling me about different stories and really painting this beautiful picture of his special interest. And my thought process was, there's a guy here who's really struggling to find his place in life. Wouldn't it just be amazing if you could go and work in a car museum?
Yeah.
Or go and be a mechanic? And for some reason, people go, I have to work in an office. I can't work in like a practical environment or like get an apprenticeship. There's this weird stigma around it in the UK of, you know, being a higher up. Like if you're going to work for a company, you've got to be a CEO. And I've never tried to speak to people to try and get them to fit into the neurotypical world. I try and get them to embrace the neurodivergent one.
Yeah. I think I have a unique approach, I would say, in terms of it depends on the individual. And I think we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier before we came on, whereas, you know, if you are able to go to school, you will get things out of school. So let's try and make school the most accommodating it can be to emulate the real world. Because, you know, luckily what I've gone into, I don't need to be in an office, but what Christopher's gone into, my partner, and I'm so glad he's done what he's done, because he's always loved wildlife all his life. He's loved birds, he's loved just every animal, he's obsessed with it.
Every time I see a seagull, I think of Chris.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. You know, Christopher is seagull. That, you know, equals equation. He is the seagull man.
That's gold man.
Yeah, he literally is. And I'm so glad that he, you know, did a bit of a turnaround at uni and he went to go into more of ecology, and he's landed to be a seasonal ecologist. That's what he's doing now. But although he does get to go in the field and he is like in his element and everyone on his team says he's doing a really great job, you know, he still has to do this this administration work, and there are still neurotypical standards, and there's still I was going to call it life admin, but it's not life admin. But it's these executive functioning skills that we differ in, but that these environments rely on us to have.
Like paperwork and reports and emails and being on a Zoom call at the right time. And,
exactly. And it's still, these are all skills that I still have to do all the time. You know, emails, you know, keeping up with things, listing things, having data. Like these are all things that I need to do as well. So there's this balance as if, like, I'm glad I did not go to school, because school still did give me a lot. It gave me a social understanding. It did give me friends. It did give me really good times. And I did learn a lot. And I'm really glad that I learned everything I did at school. I can still remember a lot of the stuff I learned from GCSE, and it's still handy now.
Me too.
Even if I didn't like it that much. So it's this balance between... But then some people, I think they should go a completely alternative way. So that's the thing. It's really understanding the individual person and their needs to make sure maybe actually if you don't go to school, how could that affect you later on? Because you need resilience. You need a bit of toughness and thick skin because life is difficult. But if you have resilience mixed with understanding and acceptance, like you just said, you will get places, because you will be able to do the things that you need to do, but you will understand how to do them in a way that works for you. So it's not that we just lack in executive functioning, or we cannot executively function. It's our skills are selective, you know? And again, it's selective on what we care about and what we don't.
And it depends on the environment at the time. It's like if I was at a coffee shop with you and there's not music blaring or the big steam machines going off, you went, Simon, tell me about why podcasting is the next evolutionary step in radio. I'd be like, how much time you got? But if you were to ask me that in a busy office where there's phones ringing and there's people talking and there's fluorescent lights, I couldn't even tell you my name.
Yeah, exactly.
But one of the things I'm interested to ask you about, and I was preloaded the question because I asked you before we recorded, are parents in these sessions with you? Because there are so many times that I wish my mum and dad had sat in on times I've spoken with a therapist or a counsellor, and I'm sure a lot of neurodivergent people that are listening to this relate to this, in that I didn't feel like I had permission to figure things out. I felt like I still had to ask my family or rely on people. I always felt like there was, whether it was a teacher or a boss or a colleague, there was always somebody I had to ask permission for. And going into like a mentoring session, especially when you're trying to figure out what you are, let alone who you are, can be really daunting when you're just on your own. So I'm intrigued, like, how do you find the interactions that you have with parents of these people that you're speaking to? Do you mentor the parents as well?
Yeah, so for anyone who is under 18, as a rule, I say that their parent has to be able to hear the session. They don't have to be in the room, because I don't want to silence, a young person because they feel like maybe they don't want their parents there and they just want to have a chat with me, and they want, they don't want to feel like that someone kind of over them or taking the role, because sometimes that can happen. Parents can take the lead, whereas I'm like, no, they need to speak, and they can. So yes, that is a rule for me. But if anyone wants their parents in the session, and normally they do for the first one when they have an introduction with me, I am so happy to have them there, and we can all, and like you said, they, especially when it comes to brain maps and people are struggling to, say anything or say their strengths, say their challenges, it is really helpful to have a parent go, no, you are really good at that. And like, this is something you're really great at, or I noticed in this situation, maybe you felt uncomfortable, and just helping, just encouraging them that they are allowed to talk about themselves and it's okay. So yeah, it really depends on the person. And I do mentor parents, because, and again, it feels weird because I'm not a parent. So like, I always tell people like, look, this is from lived experience. This is from my experiences. This is from my very deep understanding of neurodivergence and people, and this is my passion. But, I'm not a parent. Like, take it with a pinch of salt. But I'll give you what I think worked and what I think didn't work with my life and what I've seen. And, we can discuss, maybe, are you pushing or putting too many expectations on your child? Or actually, a lot of the time, I feel sometimes the opposite, whereas children still need boundaries. Everyone needs boundaries of what is acceptable and what is not. And life is going to be tough. I found it. It's not fair. It's not going to be all great. You're going to have to learn to advocate for yourself. You're going to have to learn to deal with a lot of challenges and difficult environments, and you're going to have to gain independence. And sometimes I feel there's certain, behaviors, because parents care so much, but it's actually can be counterproductive, because we need to go through hardship and challenges. And that is something I do respect a lot from my parents, is they gave me support when I wanted it, when I asked for it, when I said that I need it. But otherwise, they left me to it. They were like, you need to go and figure this out. You need to go and
they
deal
can't do
with
it for
this.
you. That's the thing, is like, you're hitting on some things there that I'm finding really relatable, in that I had a sort of experience of, I grew up with parents where my dad was the boss. He was the boss of his own business. And that, in my mind, set a very prominent thing for me of like, being anything less than the boss is kind of a failure. Yeah. No one told me that, but I built it into my sort of thinking. And I was very much a you aren't first, you're last person. So anytime I didn't win, it felt like a huge, horrific failure. And both my parents were super supportive of, come on, take the 10 count, get back up, you can do this. But they couldn't do it for me. I saw how much they struggled with that, because my mum's like a huge empath. Both my parents are autistic. And I worried them. But in my head, I was so aware that I worried them that I stopped telling them things that weren't working and then sort of switched off a little bit. Are you finding in sessions that parents are figuring out things that their kids are struggling with at the same time? Or are they getting awareness of their children in these sessions?
I think as I've found that it sounds crazy because my mum is very different to a lot of the mums that I meet, because my mum, she's a traditional, she came from Poland, a very traditional place, and you don't really talk about your feelings a lot, and so she was a bit, I would say, and not in a nasty way, but she was just a bit cooler or like colder than a lot of British mums who seem to be very involved in their children's lives and very involved in what's going on, where my mum's like, you go and do it. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what grades you're getting. I don't know what's going on at school, but I'm sure it's going to be good, because she believed in me. She trusted me. I think what I'm finding is there are parents that are so, and I think because a lot of these mums are neurodivergent themselves and they are so heavily empathetic and analytical, that they do it to their children and they really get involved and are analysing and looking at everything their child's doing and their problems they're facing. And they sometimes we come onto a session and I'm like, wow, you know so much about everything that's going on with your child, but then that also might end up making them feel like they don't know themselves,
Oh, God, yeah.
That they don't know themselves. And like you said, that they don't want to worry their parents even more, so they don't want to tell them things. But then the cycle repeats because they don't tell their parents things, and then their parents spot changes in their behavior, and then there's just kind of tension.
That's when the mask kicks in. Yeah, that's literally just what I was thinking. Yeah.
It is something I find a lot of the time, but then you look at it and you think, hey, this all comes actually from a really beautiful place of people caring for each other and people loving each other, and parents really, really caring for their children. And I think parents have so much pressure to do what's right for your autistic child and do what's right for your ADHD child, and you don't understand that they're different. How dare you? They need this, they need that. I think there is a lot of pressure on parents to get it right, and they're confused to know, am I being too harsh? Am I putting too many demands on them? Am I being too soft? Like, they're so confused.
Oh, Sophie, do you know what this made me just think of?
Yeah.
I think neurotypical kids and parents and neurodivergent kids and parents need to have a reframe of what success is. Because so many of us live with shame, right? Because like my mum, I was her special interest. I was her hyperfocus. Was only child. My mum didn't have a great childhood, and she was like, I want to make sure he never has to deal with anything that I deal with, and sort of made it repeat itself in little ways.
Yeah.
Through no fault of her own. It's like my mum had a very absent mum, whereas my mum was so full on, I actually felt like I needed to sort of create a bit of space sometimes. And like one of the great things that I've experienced is as I've gotten older, I've been able to form those conversations with my parents as like from one adult to another and say, yeah, I was your special interest. That's healthy, but it's also very intense. Yes. And, I almost did things that were out of character because I was trying to figure out who I was without you guys.
Yes.
And that's like, because my family was such a tight-knit little family, Sophie. Like, me and my mum and my dad are super, super, super close. And I moved to London and literally just started doing things that were so out of character because I was like, I don't know who I am. And it wasn't because I didn't know who I was, it's I didn't know who I was without my support unit.
You had someone else's voice or their thought process in your head.
Yeah, it's hard to make decisions when you feel like there's a gallery in your brain of people that you've got to run things past. And I totally agree with you. I think sort of ripping the Band-Aid off and moving to uni on my own was one of the best things that ever happened to me, but it also created a lot of problems because I was sort of wild and free and trying things and doing things I probably shouldn't have been doing. But it was because I almost wanted to rebel against who everyone thought I should be.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I actually am seeing that. I found really interesting what you just said there about your mum's special interest was you. And like, I think that is the perfect nutshell of a sentence to describe what I was trying to describe of what I'm seeing is a lot of these neurodivergent mums, their special interests are their neurodivergent children. And yeah, so they can end up lacking their identity because their identity has become, I'm autistic, I'm ADHD, and we are dictating life around that. And actually, like, I'm just like, although I love these words, like this is my life. I love these words. Let's talk about it. I'm like, throw these in the bin. These are just words that describe patterns of the brain. That's what it does. They describe patterns of, taking in information and processing information. They are just words. They are not physical things that we have or we don't. It's just a way that our brain works. So let's just discover your brain and how it works. Let's understand, you have a pattern associated with the autistic brain, and you also have that pattern associated with the ADHD brain. That's me, that's 100% me. But how are they associated? What is your pattern? And when people can start actually gaining their own understanding of themselves and understanding of what's going on. I think you mentioned earlier, what I really struggled with when I was younger is shame. Is I felt, because I would have meltdowns and I was very reactive and I was very hypersensitive. And, I was called when I was younger drama queen, and she's quite feisty.
Oh, I still feel like a drama queen now, like all the time. I'm either aggressive, a drama queen, like. And
when you understand that all these, when you have meltdowns where you are getting angry or where you are getting upset or shutting down or you're freezing, these are just emotions being projected into something. But we don't like to identify the emotion because we feel shameful that we feel it. So it's just kind of projected outwardly in some way or another, whether that's freezing or fawning or fighting. But understanding that it's okay to say, hey, internally, obviously, hey, that made me feel rejected. Don't know why. I guess, it reminded me of something that made me feel bad. That made me feel rejected, but that doesn't mean it's a reflection on me. And you can start looking at things more objectively. And that's what I always encourage, is acknowledging, identifying what you're feeling, maybe why you're feeling that way. If you can't figure that one out, it's okay. And then when we understand how we're feeling and we can acknowledge it, then we can learn how to approach it.
Oh, you've got to find the root cause. You've got to find the root cause, because like the amount of times that I'm with my fiance and she'll be annoyed at something and I go, what's annoying you? And she goes, oh, and I go, no, that's not what's annoying you. Come on, what is actually annoying you? And she'll tell me and she'll go, oh, I feel better now. And it's almost like that release valve of just, you've got to, like, we're completely covered in all these little knobs that have steam coming out of them, and they're going, and you've just got to find the one that is just messing with the pressure, and everything sort of regulates itself. And I vividly remember this. I had a therapist who was less a therapist and more of a mentor. And a lot of the reason as to why this show exists is because he said to me, I actually think the conversations that we had would really help people. Maybe you should go away and record them. And that's the whole reason as to why this show exists, pretty much.
Shout out to him.
Shout out to Phil. And one of the things that he said to me, which literally I say to myself daily, Sophie, is you aren't your thoughts and feelings, you just have them.
Yeah.
And that's like the permission to allow myself to be upset without feeling like a drama queen, without feeling like I'm overreacting, without feeling like I'm making everything about me. I've got energy in my body that has nowhere to go, and this is how it's coming out. But where's that energy coming from has been one of the most like healing things for me. And like what you were saying earlier, I'm ADHD. with like OCD tendencies, with a form of physical Tourette's. I have crazy echolalia. My rumination is a bitch. And I'm sure on paper, in a filing cabinet, you and I would profile very, very similarly. But we're so different.
Yeah.
We're such different people. And that's one of the things that I'm like so happy to hear, that you're doing mentoring. And I love speaking to other people that are doing mentoring, because the way that I have healed is almost like getting around that campfire and sharing life stories.
Yeah.
It's sharing
absolutely.
experiences and just feeling human and just feeling like I'm connecting with somebody. That's been the one thing that has healed me more than anything.
In a way, I think mentoring's healed me as well, because I never knew growing up that other people didn't want to go to school like me. Like I genuinely like cannot think of someone who, I knew one girl in year 7 left school, but we didn't know why. But I didn't know anyone like myself who just wasn't going in like I was, but was also like very happy to learn, like kind of also wanted to be there. So it was like really strange. I didn't know anyone like that. So I would just be in shame all the time. I would just be shameful that I didn't want to go in. I dislike myself for making things more difficult for myself. And then it would just be a repetitive cycle that I repeated and repeated till uni. I'm going to go in. No, I don't want to go in. Why didn't you go in? Oh, look what you've done now. And just feeling so shameful about my procrastination, my demand avoidance, my not wanting to go in, and feeling shameful of mostly how rejected I used to feel and still feel sometimes. I'm so easily rejected, I think, a lot of the time. And that rejection sensitivity it comes from a lot of experiences. Everyone's rejection sensitivity is personal to them. And it is, so when I talk about rejection sensitivity, I literally have a PowerPoint that I've made, which, because like I said, I'm a very visual learner, lots of information isn't always helpful. So we go through this PowerPoint of understanding what it is. I literally call it a hypersensitive social alarm system that just like goes off more often than other people. And I also talk about the strengths of being quite sensitive to rejection. It means that you're probably a very thoughtful, loyal, person, that this is also what it could mean about you. Let's also talk about what that could mean. And then when we break it down and situations where we find it, we can reframe them. We can try and see things from objective points of view and I literally, the first page of my PowerPoint about rejection sensitivity is that it is not about being weak. It is not about being crazy, because that's the one that I always felt. I always felt like I was crazy. And it was the worst feeling like you're crazy.
I remember genuinely one Christmas, Sophie, having a horrific meltdown. And I turned to my mum and I was like, I am nuts.
Yeah.
I was like, they would have lobotomized me a very, very long time ago.
Yes.
And that's why I've struggled with like drink and substances. It's that Tom Waits quote of rather the bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. And I stopped feeling crazy when I found words and names for these things and reframed it. So I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what helped me as well, because before I was just like, I'm crazy. I'm not well. That's what I used to think. I'm not well. I know perfectly now. I've never not been not well, however you say that. I know what you mean. I've always been well. I'm a very analytical person. I'm very thoughtful. I'm very hyper aware. Many experiences in my life have shaped that. It's not just because I was born with this brain, but experiences add this type of brain equals that. It's an equation, isn't it, sometimes? So just understanding it again, and just breaking it all down. Just love to break things down, visualize them, chat about them. And so this sounds like I'm very like strategy or practical focused, but this is just one area of what I'm happy to do. And a lot of the other time it is just share that we as people feel similar ways, and I sorry, during this I could think of a million stories of my clients that I could talk about, but I'm like no, do not talk about other people's experiences.
That must be hard being a mentor who you speak to all of these people and also being an oversharer of being like, let's put the brake on that.
Don't do that one. But I hear someone's experience and I go, you know what? I experienced that so similar, but kind of in a different way. So like some people, they don't want to be around. They're very conscious of other people looking at them and being around other people.
Perception sensitivity is literally the worst for me.
And it almost becomes like, it's a special interest, but like it not in a good way. Like it's very obsessive, and I felt that way in a different way because I felt that way about how I looked growing up and my body and body dysmorphia and things like that. But actually, when you look at it, it's a very similar experience and the emotions are very similar. So again,
the outcome's very similar of how you feel about yourself. Yeah,
exactly. And just having these conversations, and not to, be mean to old people, but like I think having someone more of your age to talk about it with is nice. It's like I'm not talking to someone who is 50 years old, even though that 50-year-old could be really good. I think there's a mental thing of like, we grew up with social media. I literally was the age when Instagram came out, I think when I was like 13 or 14. So I get that. I grew up with technology. I was in that, generation.
Oh, I'm a what they would call a zillennial. I'm the last generation that grew up with analog and moved into digital. I remember before even Facebook, MySpace and things like that. But I totally agree with you. If I was somebody now who was recommending a mentor, I would try and find somebody who is a similar demographic, simply because you speak a very similar sort of language. Not that I'm going to be like, talk about Ohio or whatever the kids call these days. But, they're very weird words now. You want to feel old, guys, speak to a kid. But I agree with you in that I am a better advocate, in my opinion anyway, for people my own age. It's like I speak to people in my family that are a similar age to me, like cousins or whatever. I try and speak to the uncles and the aunts. I'm wasting my time sometimes because they have a very fixed idea of what neurodivergence is and they can't break away from that rigidity. And a lot of the time as well, a 50-year-old talking to a 20-year-old without trying to will patronise them. Because they're like, I've lived longer than you, I've got more experience, listen to me, and whatever you've got to say is irrelevant because I've got more of it.
I think that's what a lot of young people experience, yeah. And most of the people that I have spoken to have all gone through some form of therapy. And obviously I really recommend therapy, but
me too.
I recommend therapy that is from a neurodivergent therapist. Like, like Ashley, who's on the podcast, like Ashley has been so amazing to me because I felt like she could actually understand me and not just hear what I'm saying and then try and reframe it. It was actually, oh no, yep, I get that. I was there. I did that as well. I felt that way. And you're like, oh, really? And you're like, you're good? You're doing good now? And it's very inspiring. And so you're like, okay, well then I can do good as well. Because you're not just saying this off of just trying to work me out. You're saying it because because you've been there. And there's something really, really powerful about that. And that's why I've started doing group sessions as well with people who are similar ages, because and when I've done that, people's feedback have literally been like, I didn't know that other people felt that way. I didn't know there were other people like me. And it made them feel so good about themselves because they could just connect and like be happy with their other people who are like them. And they get, I say match each other's freak, not in a rude way, but like, I just like to say like, we match each other's freak. Like we're freaking out, in a similar way. It's awesome. It's fun. It's great. And you need to meet people like that. But what I was going to say is also, sorry, I just always have so many things to say.
No, it's all right.
This is the one thing that goes wrong in my sessions is I talk too much and then I'm like, Are you okay?
We will wrap up soon, but don't worry.
You are allowed to speak now, is what I say to them. Because I'm like,
sorry, I've been doing
sorry.
a podcast with your dad for 3 years. It's fine.
So there's for young people, it's nice to talk to someone a similar age to them. And then I think for older people, it's nice to talk to someone who has a fresh perspective. So I think it can go... Me just being a saleswoman here, you know.
Oh, well,
I
you've
can
got
speak
to
to anyone.
Get your back, girl. Get your back. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation today, Sophie. And as somebody who does like entrepreneurship, and you've done it in your own way, but the fact that you're doing it for good and like you're trying to help people and grow within the community, I don't think you could tick more boxes of why neurodivergent people should maybe have a crack at it on their own. I would really recommend it, and I would also really recommend anybody come and speak to you. So how could they do that? How can they book a session with you?
You can book a session with me through my website, which is Sophie James Mentor.
And that's all right, I've got it written. Sorry, I'm asking you to remember something that's not written down. So it's Sophie James, ndmentoring.com. The link is in the description of this podcast episode. So yes. Go and link and book. Do you do? I should have asked this. Do you do like over Zoom? Are they in person?
It's all through Zoom. And yeah, you can not have your camera on because I know some people feel uncomfortable with that, which is absolutely fine. Some people want to speak for the whole session and I'll listen, and then some people want to somehow listen to me all session and not speak. Yeah, cool. Yeah, they are just spoken at for 30 minutes and they love it. So, you know, I love personalizing and customizing to each individual person and hearing everyone's unique story. I think it's just, I find it really rewarding. And, you know, I'm just so happy that I've done this. I convinced myself, you know, you can do it, you know, and I did a counseling course. I did a child safeguarding course. I did, you know, and now I'm actually doing a neurodivergent coaching course, and I'm doing a business administration course. And I get to do it how I want to do it. And I love it. So I just think for anyone out there who also has a passion in something, you know, there are always alternative ways. You don't always have to go down a traditional route. You can make something of yourself and your interests and what you want to do. You can do it.
No, I absolutely love that. Define your own success is the advice that I would give everybody. And doing it sometimes is the success. You just don't realise it. It's hindsight season 2020, right? It's like, you know, you never know how well you're doing until you're a few years down the line and looking back on it. But I've loved this conversation, Sophie. It's been so great talking to you. Really excited to get you back on the show. And anybody that's listening to this, go and book a session with Sophie. I think whether you're a young person or the parent of a young person, it'll be a brilliant way of connecting with somebody in your community and normalizing our alternative neurotype and our experiences. So Sophie's going to be with us tomorrow for the hot topic. We've got an interesting conversation around a form of bullying that has formed, so we're going to be discussing that. But thank you very much for people that are listening. Sophie, thank you so much for joining me. You've been amazing.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening.
It's been a pleasure. We will be back next week with another episode of the Neurodivergent Experience. Thank you so much for listening. Be kind, everyone. Be safe. Thanks for tuning in to the Neurodivergent Experience. We hope today's episode sparked something for you, whether it's a new idea, a bit of validation, or just a moment of connection. Remember, new episodes are every week, so be sure to join us for the next one for more conversations and insights into the neurodivergent experience. If you've enjoyed this podcast, help us grow. You can do that by rating and reviewing this show. Your support makes a huge difference in helping us reach more people who could benefit from these conversations. You can connect with us on social media. Find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Just search for the Neurodivergent Experience. Thank you again for listening. And until next time, take care of yourself. You're not alone in this journey.
EBSA.
Thanks for listening. Support autistic-led media through Autistic Culture Plus and enjoy bonus content, early episodes, and ad-free listening. Visit autisticculture.supercast.com to learn more.